Hey team, as spring is arriving here in Asheville, I stepped outside one morning recently and I got the most beautiful whiff of a bush nearby that was starting to release its flowers. And I was so appreciative to absorb that smell because for so much of my life, I've actually not been able to smell anything. I suffered from allergies a lot when I was young. I took tons of Benadryl. I took tons of Sudafed and other decongestants in order to try to reduce the overreaction in my sinuses. As a result, this dehydrated my sinuses, packed them full of unresolved inflammation, and reduced the sensitivity and exposure of the little nerve endings called the olfactory bulbs that allows me to smell things. And so for decades, I would even have people come up to me and say, "Oh, you should smell this. It smells wonderful." And I would pretend that it smelled wonderful. I would fake a smile and go, "Oh, yes, that's great." When in fact, I couldn't even smell what they were smelling, even though my nose wouldn't be running, even though it wouldn't even be a season where there were things that I was allergic to. I was so dehydrated and compacted in my sinuses that I wasn't able to smell. Now, along this health journey and along with becoming a health and fitness coach, I started to realize that the layering effect of all of those medications did not reduce my allergies. They just left me with unresolved inflammation. And as my body has evolved over the last decade, I've been able to smell things more and more frequently. It wasn't an instantly upward journey. It's been a steady progress with good seasons and bad seasons, but progressively more good seasons. The mindset I adopted was that when I would experience symptoms of my allergies, I would take steps to resolve the inflammation in my body. And as I resolved the inflammation in my body, I was then able to reduce the allergic overreaction, resolve that inflammation that had been packed away after decades of decongestant use, and now have found stability and success in my allergic reactions. And what you need to understand is that an allergy is when your body has an immune system reaction, and either one or both of these scenarios occurs, creating a layering, amplifying effect of the symptoms. The first is that your body does need to mount a defense against allergens. Your body needs to mount a defense against things that are not part of your body and need to not get inside the body. Now, you can have an appropriate reaction, meaning you get an exposure and your body reacts only the specific amount. You can also have an overreaction, which means your body reacts to how much you were exposed and way more than that. Now, the overreaction occurs when external, unrelated stress factors increase your body's stress response system. The most basic of these are dehydration and quick, shallow breathing. When a body is dehydrated and you breathe quick and more shallow, your body naturally starts to amplify its stress response. When this aligns with an allergic normal reaction, the reaction goes even greater than normal. The normal reaction needs you to resolve the byproducts of that battle. The white blood cells and the gunk that's created from the battle needs to be swept through the immune system. It needs to go into open-ended tubes with one-way valves called lymph vessels. It needs to then travel through to the circulation just above the heart. It then needs to go into the bloodstream where it's taken to the kidneys and we pee it out. Now, this normal process occurs easily when we're well hydrated, when we have a more expansive and easeful breath, and when the reaction is appropriate to the exposure. If the reaction is excessive, we can start to clog up and slow the drainage of that area. And when we clog up and slow the drainage of that area, it gets backed up. And when it gets backed up, it starts coming out in secondary ways. The secondary ways are out through the nose. are draining through the sinuses into the back of the throat, and then we cough it out. If those clogs get even more expansive, it can start to come out other secondary pathways, like through the skin. And so runny noses, sore throats can be signs that you have drainage issues in the primary pathways, and now you're starting to get a release of inflammation through secondary pathways. So we have to understand what needs to happen when we get that exposure is that we need to ensure that we're not overreacting, we're just getting a normal reaction. And we ensure that normal reaction by as often as we can expanding our breath and finding more ease. And so the sign when we start to get a runny nose should be an opportunity for us to find ease and expansion of our breath. And when we do that, we shift our body from an overreaction into a normal reaction. And this may not have an immediate effect, but it will most certainly have a long-term effect when you do it frequently enough, often enough. As soon as you notice that runny nose, find some ease of expansion of the breath. Now, along with preventing an overreaction, we also need to ensure that we have enough drainage for normal reactions. Now, the problem with decongestants and other medications is that they don't actually resolve the tissue damage and inflammation. They don't actually help it to move through those primary pathways. They dehydrate it. And think of this like boogers drying out. So you've got gunk in your body that needs to drain through a pathway. And if you dehydrate it, it shrinks a little bit, kind of like beef jerky. It shrinks a little. And by shrinking, you temporarily are less aware that the gunk is in there. And so you think, oh, I'm healthier now, I'm better now, because it's not so stuffy and not so clogged, except it's only dehydrated and it's stuck there. Now it's definitely not going to move. And these layers can build up week after week, month after month. And what this does is this starts to reduce the normal drainage. So even if we have a normal reaction, we can still have clogging in the air. We can still get that inflammation backing up through the primary and coming out secondary ways like through the skin. So what we need to do is we need to ensure that we are washing and hydrating all of that old gunk as well, so that even the normal reaction can wash its way through the primary, can wash its way through those lymph vessels, those open-ended tubes with one-way valves. Now, hydration is more than just water. It's water and salt, because we've got to hydrate the tissues. And what you need to understand is that when you drink water, it goes into your gut. And from your gut, it goes to your bloodstream. Now, from your bloodstream, it can go two ways. One, it can go straight to the kidneys when you pee it out, and that's a more clear urine, closer to water. The second way, the better way, is that it gets out of the bloodstream and it washes where the inflammation is. It washes those sinuses. It lubricates all those dry boogers in order to get them gooey so that they can move through that primary lymph pathway. And think of this like expecting a rainstorm to clean your sinks, your tubs, and your toilets. You've got a barrier that prevents water from getting to where that inflammation is. And so a big old rainstorm, like you drinking a ton of water, is not going to wash your sink, it's not going to wash your tub, it's not going to wash your toilet, because the water is protected and it's on the outside. We need to help that water get inside. And the way the water gets inside the body is through salt. If we are low on salt, we don't get that water to the place that we need to wash that gunk. The water stays on the outside of the house instead of getting into the tubs, the sinks, and the toilets. And so we drink water. That water goes to our gut. It goes from our gut to our bloodstream. When a battle occurs with our immune system attacking foreign substances like pollen, salt is called to that area as well. And that salt calls water out of the bloodstream to that area to help wash everything away. And so if we're low on salt, then the salt doesn't get called to where the tissue damage is, and the water doesn't get called to where the tissue damage is, and things can't get washed away. Now, when that water doesn't get called to where the tissue damage is, and it doesn't move through the lymph system, It comes out more clear. But when it does get called to where the tissue damage is and it sweeps through the immune system, it helps us resolve that inflammation, it helps us resolve that battle. It goes through the lymph system, dumps back into the circulation. From there, it goes to the kidneys and it comes out and it's a steady yellow. And so we need to make sure we're drinking enough water. And then we need to assess our urine color. And if it's trending towards clear, we need to add sea salt. And so when we find ourselves with those allergy symptoms, we're going to find the expansion and ease of the breath to make sure our immune system doesn't overreact. We're going to hydrate ourselves with enough water. We're going to assess our urine color to determine if we need more sea salt. Now, as that inflammation needs to move through the lymph system, we need to realize that that does not get moved by the pumping of the heart. So that fluid would just sit there unless we actually move the body, unless we actually engage our muscles. And that is what moves that inflammation through those open-ended tubes with one-way valves. So we can be sitting, we can be laying down, we can be asleep, and our body's going to move fluid through our circulation, through the arteries and veins, but it's not going to move fluid through the lymph system. We've actually got to move and engage our body to move the inflammation through the lymph system. And so along with expansion and ease of the breath, along with hydration with water and sea salt, we also need physical activity. Now that physical activity and the intensity that we do it can either help or hinder this process. And so as part of the Stay Active method, we check in on how our body is feeling to determine the type and intensity of work that we should be doing. If we're feeling achy and sore, that's a buildup of inflammation in the area. And it's building up such to the point where it's starting to push towards those secondary pathways. It might come out the skin. It might not have enough ease to get through the primary pathway of the lymph system. And that achiness and soreness is letting us know, hey, don't push too much. We need movement in order to move that fluid through, but not too intensely, or we're going to push it out the wrong way. And so when that happens, we take on what we call adaptable work. That work really focuses on the ease and expansion of the breath. It still moves us, but it does so gently to the edges of our comfort zone in many, many different ways. This reduces the likelihood that we're going to push something too far, but it still engages us in enough movement to help start the drainage of that inflammation. Now, when the achiness and the soreness reduces, when our sore throat is less, when the achiness in our sinuses is less, maybe we just feel a little tired. And that fatigue means, hey, energy is still going into the battle. It's still going into our immune system's response to stop the invader. And so if we have too intense of activity, we're going to take energy away from that battle and we're going to start losing that battle. So when we feel tired, we take on steady work, which is more repetition. It's a little bit more intensity. We move a little quicker than we would on adaptable work. And this helps move that inflammation a little faster because we're not quite on the precipice of passing it through the secondary pathways because we're not as sore, we're not as achy. And so this middle ground of steady work, of quick and easy, helps us move that inflammation through those primary pathways and resolve the inflammatory process. And it doesn't drain our energy, so we can keep as much of our resources on the front lines of that battle as we need. And when we do that correctly, often enough and for long enough, our body actually improves its ability to work efficiently, meaning we can do lots of our daily activities easier without taking energy away from the immune system in that frontline battle. When we've successfully done months and months of steady work and we have some allergy symptoms, we can still do the artwork and not exhaust ourselves. So when we have allergy symptoms and we start moving towards activity and we feel tired, we take on that steady work, which is a little easier, but still a little quicker. It's kind of in that middle ground. Now, once the frontline battle has been won, our energy levels start to return. but we still have some symptoms. We still have a runny nose. We still have some itchy eyes, but they're not significant. They're just enough for us to say, oh, I got to take on some activity. We're going to use that great feeling to take on strong work because this is going to be the greatest intensity, the greatest internal tension in our body. Now, what this does is this helps us break through and free up old clogs. So when you've taken decongestants in the past, when you have dehydrated your tissues in the past, when you have taken medications or activities that have reduced the awareness of those blockages in your body, and you then take on strong work, it's going to signal to the body, hey, we need access to this. Let's get it opened up. We're going to free up those hoses and those tubes. It's kind of like using a jet pressure washer to free up a clogged drain pipe. Now, we don't want to do that when we're tired, when the battle on the front line is still going on. But once we've won that battle and our energy starts to come back, boom, time to push forward. So the symptoms of your allergies this season can be an opportunity for you to improve your health. When you feel those symptoms, ease and expansion of the breath to prevent an overreaction. Hydration with water and sea salt to drain that battle away and to drain all the old battles through the body to open up the drain system. Start to move your body in order to help that process along and choose the right intensity level in order to maximize what your body needs out of that activity. Now, when you take medications that dehydrate, when you take injections that bypass the natural process of your immune system, you're creating ignorance in the body. You're thinking you're healthier, but you're just creating more problems in the future by temporarily alleviating those issues. And that ignorance and that lack of awareness of what your body needs and the lack of action for the steps that you need to take creates the allergy suffering that we see occurring so prevalent in our modern culture. But now that you know that process, and now that you experience those symptoms and take the right steps and do the work, you're going to shift from sufferer to struggle. An allergy struggle means you're putting in the work, but you don't feel the progress yet. But you keep taking those steps, and your body starts improving. And as it starts to improve, you start to notice internally that there's progress. Others may not, but you are. And that's what we call allergy stable. And from allergy stable, you continue taking the steps. Now other people start to notice. And they say, hey, what are you doing? Was it a new drug? Did you get a new kind of allergy shot? No, it's not that. It's the ease and expansion of the breath. It's the hydration. It's the regular activity at the appropriate intensity and amount. And by doing that, you inspire them to do the same. And this is when you reach allergy success. And from that place, you start to realize where you were and where you are now. When you realize where you were and where you are now, you remember what they're going through at those stages. And they start to ask your advice, and you're able to give them that advice. You're able to give them that perspective and help them along. That's allergy significance. That's when you reach a level of improvement that you're helping others go through the same journey that you went through because your life, your health feels so much more empowered and inspired than before. So we're building a team of heroes and mentors going through this process themselves, improving their own health, improving their own allergy symptoms in order to make the mind-body relationship better within ourselves, in order to make the relationship between us and others even greater. We're going to serve and inspire all of those around us, and you can join the team. All right, run fast, walk easy, steady onward.